Welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. This will be our 53rd webinar, and we have as our guest Waldo. He stepped in on the thread that Christopher Creek started a couple of webinars ago on tooling with respect to Business Central. Things we're doing nowadays has become more normal using Azure DevOps, Git, etc. And Waldo is going to talk about, as you can read from the title, the setup that the developers at iFacto are using in their daily work. So welcome, Waldo. I'm very pleased to have you on the show again, and curious to, I've seen during some presentations, etc., a couple of things, but I'm really curious about, let's say, the whole collection. I'm Luc van Vugt. I'm your moderator for today, and as always, go through a couple of slides on practical rules. Microphone of everybody is muted. You cannot unmute it, but please be welcome, be invited to be part of this and post your questions on the question window. It's on the console of GoToWebinar, so please use that. I will pick it up, and we agreed that if it makes sense to step in immediately, I will step in and pose the question to Waldo, and otherwise there is Q&A also, room for Q&A at the end of the session. Well, the recording will also be put on YouTube. As you can see, we are growing and more recordings are there. Make use of them. I think you all know the way, but if you don't, you'll find it through this URL. And of course, if you want to be in the know, feel free to be subscribing to our newsletter, which irregularly comes around as soon as I have planned new webinars or have maybe something else to share with you. What's ahead? We're, well, close to the summer recession or season for the Northern Hemisphere. So at the end of July, I will take my holiday break. Before that, we have two webinars, one by Freddie Christensen, where he's going to talk about AL Go for GitHub. You could say another number in our series of development tools. And Kenny Pontoppidan stepped in to talk about the telemetry thing, well, the tool that has become more and more useful, you could say, but actually also mandatory in our work to get things better, well, monitored and better performing. If you have any ideas, please be invited to share it and well, help me to find next speakers. And now, before I'm going to hand over to you, Waldo, I want to thank Fornaf to be our sponsor and making this possible. So it's your part now, Waldo. I'm going to make you presenter. You should be able to share your screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
And your voice is also there. Screen. Yeah, and I hear your voice too. So the floor is yours.
Cool.
Have fun.
Thank you so much, Luc, and thanks again for having me today on one of your Areopa webinars. Always a pleasure. I'm not going to spend too much time on introducing myself or what I'm going to do, because I realized I kind of like want to talk about a lot. And I'm not sure I'm going to make it in time, so let's just get going. I'm going to talk about iFacto and how we basically are doing our development stuff today in the life of a iFacto developer. And why would I be able to do that? Well, I am actually one of the founding partners, let's say, from iFacto Business Solutions. I'm an acting development manager at iFacto. It's my main job. It's what I do, let's say 98% of the time. The other 2% of the time, I tend to blog and go to conferences and speak and do these kinds of things that I'm doing now at the moment. But as a development manager, I should have quite some influence on whatever, let's say, happens on development basis. So yeah, let's go into that a little bit. Now, maybe a few words on iFacto, and specifically on the development part of iFacto. We are with a team of 27 developers. iFacto has also consultants, by the way, but let's focus on the development part. Who is serving like 350 customers over a time span of, let's say, 20 years. Doing that, we focus on, let's say, products. We have a repeatable product. We call it Distri, or Distri apps, Distri Plus. And we basically implement them at customers. It's a wholesale solution, and we are kind of development related, let's say, focused. So we also do quite some customer development as well. And we still do that both on-prem as on SaaS. And I must admit, today, there is still a lot of on-prem going on. As I said, we are 20 years old. We are an old partner. We are dinosaurs, probably, yeah, that probably also is why we are still doing on-prem quite a lot. We're not promoting it, but we kind of feel that on-prem is still quite present in Belgium. That being said, focus is obviously on in SaaS. But we want to still do some business and be able to pay our consultants and developers, so we need a business on-prem as well. Okay, let's take a peek behind the curtains and focus on, let's say, yeah, the developers, obviously. Now, we try to keep it as simple as at all possible. You could say that that is our vision to our development process, our development methodology. Now, obviously, we have more than just one vision. We have visions. And let's say whatever we try to do needs to be future-proof. It needs to be extendable, especially in an extension world, right? It needs to be upgradable, especially in a SaaS world. It needs to be repeatable, and so on and so on. And you will see all of these pinpoints coming back in the next topics that I will try to share. What is important here is upgradability. As we all know, SaaS upgrades every month, coming with new Shopify connectors, as we have seen. We try to do that on-prem as well. So just to be able to, let's say, handle all customers at the same time, but also handle development and support the same way. So upgradability is quite a focus point in our case. And you'll see that, yeah, in the next slides as well. Let me start with the first topic, the design guidelines. Every developer, let's say, is being taught some guidelines. And again, keep it simple, right? We don't want to make it too complex. I mean, from the moment you have design guidelines that depend on certain, let's say, circumstances, well, then you make it complex. We try to have guidelines that are applicable always. For customers, for apps, for any kind of circumstance, the same guidelines. And that is also what we do. We apply every guideline that you already see here on the slide in every circumstance, on-prem, in SaaS, for customers, and for products. Yeah. The first one is absolutely not a surprise, probably. I've been talking about that pattern for a long time. We have been implementing that for a long time, and we have been very happy with that for a long time as well. The generic method pattern is a very simple pattern that basically is described on the AL-guidelines.dev. By the way, if you're not familiar with that, well, I strongly advise you to have a look, a peek on the AL-guidelines.dev. It is a description of multiple patterns, multiple guidelines, and it we continue to add more content to it. In any case, one of the first things that I put on it is one of the main guidelines that we have in our company, and which is the generate method. I'm not going to go too much into that. There are already some videos on that. There is a description, as you can see, about that as well. But what I want to pinpoint is actually the basis, what it all comes down to. And it all comes down to putting your business logic isolated in the code unit with a specific guide or specific pattern. And the most important part here of the pattern is the fact that you actually encapsulate your business logic with an on before and an after event, which kind of like makes it extendable, but also decouplable. Yeah, and that is basically what brings us a lot of opportunities, a lot of flexibility, which we will see later on in the session. Another guideline that we apply all the time, I mean, no questions asked, let's say, is the subscriber code units. It's again a guideline. It's not really a pattern, it's a guideline. It's basically isolating your subscribers in multiple code units. And there are multiple ways to do that, or multiple ways to think about that. Let me just share what we do. We basically create small code units with, let's say, a limited set of subscribers. And yeah, what describes the limited set of subscribers is basically the functionality. Let me just go into one example. If I would just get one of my code units here, let me just open this one. And you see here that this code unit is a subscriber code unit. I recognize that from naming conventions. Any kind of code unit that ends with subs is a subscriber code unit. And you can already see that we have quite a lot of them. And by having quite a lot of them means that it's not like I have one big code unit with all subscribers. No, I basically split them up in multiple code units per functionality. And you see here I have the GTS, which is a journal template selector. It's a piece of functionality. We call it a module of a certain app, the Fin app in this case. It is a very clear description where we subscribe to. So apparently this app needs to extend this functionality with that. It's not the best example ever, but it is an example to keep subscribers as small as at all possible. Maybe I've got another example here. Let's see. This is a bigger one. Yeah, not really the best. I'm not going to search for too long. Let me see. But this is another example that hooks into the base application. What is important on the subscriber guideline, in my opinion, is first of all a limited set of subscribers. So you only load the code unit while you really need it. So you're not loading big code units, but small code units. And it basically subscribes where this functionality, whatever that functionality is actually subscribing to the base application or to the dependent application. And that's already a subscription, a readable subscription. Okay, this is where this module is hooking into. Yeah, and that makes it just, yeah, very nice to work with. So definitely subscriber code units, it helps in performance, but it also helps in readability. ATDD, a concept that we try to apply. I put it on the guidelines slide. Is it a guideline? It's basically a methodology, let's say. It's basically creating tests for as much as at all possible, right? Before you are creating your business logic, create a test first, and then you already have a test to test the actual business logic that you're about to create. This is a concept that we learned from Luc. Thank you, Luc. We, let's say, try to apply that, and with limited, let's say, with average success. Some people are really doing and applying this like we really want to. Other people still create their tests at the end, and even after code review. But yeah, in any case, ATDD is especially something that we want to put on as a guideline as well. We will talk more on test-driven development, or at least on tests, how we handle that further in the slide deck. And then obviously some general coding guidelines. What we look at during code review, which we'll talk about in a minute, we really would like, we really look into how to approach data and how to, if data is being accessed the most efficient way. Are there keys? Is there a set load fields? Is there a calc fields in the loop or not? If so, isn't it better to have an auto calc field? So these are things that we really look into, and we really train the developers to look into them themselves. One of the examples is set load fields. Obviously, apply it decently, and table extensions are less of a problem. Not completely no problem anymore, but still less of a problem. And that is kind of like something that we would like to facilitate as well. So general coding guidelines, you can again find them on AL guidelines as well. More to follow. There's actually quite a lot that's in the pipeline that we need to describe to put as general guidelines here as well. We have a cloud-first approach. So any kind, if the developer wants to, let's just one stupid example, if they want to implement some kind of .NET interoperability, well, they can't. Right? Because we have a very cloud-first approach. Very simply said, and I have a slide on that as well, the target is cloud. It's as simple as that. It needs to be able to work in Business Central SaaS. Full stop. Anything, even that we do on-prem only, needs to work in the cloud. And then we have a very specific app architecture. I will show that in a minute. We try to create rather small apps instead of just one big monolith. We, let's say, embrace the dependency architecture, or the dependency culture that we get as with apps. I will show that in a minute as well. It's obviously also something that our developers need to take into account as well and get used to, obviously, as well. So the generic method pattern, and I handled that. This is described on the AL guidelines.dev. Now, the consequence of doing this in a product like we have made that we have 6,574 events. That is a lot. That is a lot published events, which makes us actually very, let's say, flexible at the customer side. And that's also something that we want, obviously. We need to be able to do whatever we did in CAL. And in CAL, we were able to do everything. So let's try to approach that everything by being as flexible as at all in an app world. And it all starts with events. We need to have enough events. And that is one of the consequences that we have with the generic method pattern. That, yeah, we basically are able to hook into every event or every method that we create. So any piece of business logic that we create, we are able to hook into and even decouple, because the generic method pattern has got this var handle pattern as well. Yeah, so yeah, here is the handled. So if we would handle the on before, we basically implement a new implementation of this method. And that makes it very strong to be able to use that in your customer customizations. So that's the maximum flexibility. Then this is just one of the examples that I had to do recently. We had a method that was called get inventory filter. Whatever it, I mean, it was just going to create a filter, nothing special. But for this customer, our product way of doing that didn't make any sense. So we need to be able to decouple this method and provide a new way to create a filter. And very simple. I have my new way of filtering here, and I basically just handle it, done. And I'm still able, it's like going into the code unit and completely comment out the code unit and create your own version of that code unit or function. That is all possible with the generic method pattern. I am very aware that the handled pattern has got disadvantages as well. If multiple instances handle the same method, then you have a problem, absolutely. But when managed, I mean, I'm going to be the only one who's handling my product, or somebody else and another partner who is implementing a custom are going to be the only one who is handling the methods of my product. And then if that is managed, then at least you have that possibility. It's worse to have no possibilities than to have too many possibilities. Okay, the cloud-first approach. It's not just having the target to cloud everywhere. And yes, in every single app, we have that target to cloud. And I'm talking about the app.json target to cloud. There is not a single app in our company, including cloud apps or ISV apps, that have the target to on-prem. Except for one, actually, when I think about it. Let me try to go to DevOps. I could just simply show you some repositories of the product. So this is the product, multiple apps, and as I said, the target is going to be cloud always. Except for one, and that is actually a good reason, because this is actually an app, REST-Win, to be able to use Windows authentication in all our REST calls. Now, to be able to do that, you need to be able to set the use default network Windows authentication, which basically is a method that you can only call on-prem. So what we did is we created an app that is able to set that method, let's say, and this app is purely just this one line of code. That's it. And that is the only exception that we have. Actually, not important at all, but yeah, in our cloud first mindset in that case. On top of that, we want to have one product. So whatever we deploy on-prem, we deploy in app source, or vice versa. Whatever is in app source is used on-prem as well. There is not a single line of code. There is no compiler directive that is going to distinguish between app source and on-prem. Yeah, everything is completely 100% the same. Whatever is in app source and on-prem, and that obviously also builds up some limitation. I mean, if you would like to comply with app source, you are limiting yourself on-prem. I mean, I'm not able to use all these on-prem methods that Microsoft has got in their base product. So it is a limitation. Now, to cope with that limitation, obviously we enable the code cops to really be safe, let's say, and that whatever we would do would still work in a pretend extension in SaaS or an app source extension. We also always build against the latest sandbox. You probably will do that as well. And we always have a stable master branch. Now, that might sound strange, but this is again in scope of the let's keep everything as simple as at all possible. Now, to be able to hotfix app source, you're not able to hotfix app source. I mean, there is no way. We are not able to push a hotfix of a product to a certain customer. That's simply, I mean, not possible. What we are able to do is build a new app and publish that on app source and then upgrade the customer on app source. So in a way, just imagine there is a problem with the customer that is using your product or our product on app source, and you really need to now fix that. The only way that I could see to make it work is to have a stable master branch, to have a stable branch that I could deploy at all times to the current release or the current version of Business Central. And having a stable master branch kind of like means whatever features that you're implementing will have to have their own, let's say, everything, their own test environment, their own branch, their own basically builds and all that. So I can only basically pull the changes to the master branch from the moment I know that everything has been tested thoroughly and working perfectly together with whatever is already in the master branch. So yeah, the way how we do that is we work with a very flexible way, or at least to set up these demo environments and test environments. And we will see that. It's called Hadock, and we will see that in a minute. Furthermore, in terms of the design guidelines, as I already briefly showed, we have here a collection of apps, right? And this is actually just one product. And let me just show that in VS Code. This is basically a multi-root workspace that contains all the apps and the test apps. You might already wonder, like, does that really work? Well, I must say this amount of apps requires quite a machine to be able to work decently. An average laptop will not be able to handle this decently. But yeah, it's the entire product, but the product contains multiple, let's say, modules. So multiple collections of apps. It's one big collection, but we don't use that, all of that in one offering on AppSource, for instance. So usually we will have multiple projects of workspaces that have the specific collection that I'm working on. But do know all of these apps basically interconnect to each other, right? There is a dependency model. And if I just open that model, also the reason why I made this, by the way. Oh, that doesn't work. Just review that manually then. And you will see here that it sounds or it seems like spaghetti. It is not. I mean, we didn't create chaos here. There's actually some order in the chaos. The more you look at this graph, the more order that there will come. As I said, all the apps are interconnected, but not all of them are interconnected with each other. So there is definitely some thoughts on dependency model. And if you, for instance, look at that, look at the lowest level, actually, our licensing component. This is actually one of the causes of, yeah, let's say half of the arrows that you see on the picture. Simply because every single app has got licensing built in. And then the fact that we have just this wide picture kind of like means that we don't really have a lot of levels. Lowest level is obviously the level of frameworking. So this is a licensing framework. This is tracking framework, environment framework, whatever framework that we have. So I can even say the first three levels are all just frameworking, like library apps. But that's basically just making developer easier to do repeatable jobs. And then on top of that, we just have like 3 or 4 levels, let's say 4 levels of real functionality. Yeah, and then the top level here is just offering apps. Basically, just to bundle a bunch of apps into one collection of apps that we can offer on AppSource. And the same here for logistics or Logistic Belgium is very similar. Only this one contains some finance features as well. We also have on this level some offering apps and all that. Doesn't really matter. So yeah, they are interconnected, and it might seem like spaghetti, but I must say this app approach instead of one monolith does let us and make us think in a very abstract way. And that's what I love about it. I mean, some of these apps really just contain, like this one, just one line of code basically. But they, yeah, are really just solving the problem that they need to solve. And they are not like interconnected too much. So yeah, that is absolutely something that our developers need to get a grasp on, obviously. Not developers, by the way, consultants, our product manager really knows every single app and what functionality is in there. And that's something that you need to get used to, absolutely. Now for customers, this is the product. For customers, we, again, make it a little bit simpler. For customer development, we just make sure that we have one app, one customer development app. Maybe I can just show you that briefly. I would go to customers, any of the customer, let's say this one. We just have one repository, which is the customer. And yeah, that's it. That's where we do all our developments. Not all, but we will talk a little bit more into that later on. Now, before we develop, we need a development environment, and this is where Hadock comes into place. This is an in-house developed tool, again in AL, but a lot in .NET as well. Basically, just that connects Docker with HA proxy. That is, by the way, the Hadock acronym. And also something that we call ALOps repository, is basically just a repository of apps. And so again, an app architecture, but basically just a functionality that we have that can provide Docker-based development environments. Because we noticed that, like, and I'm talking back in the days that Docker was very, very new. It was also not the stablest thing to do at that point. Now it has improved a lot more. But back in the days, I mean, just giving a bunch of scripts to my developers just did not work. So we decided to have it a central managed Docker-based development environment. So that basically developers would be able to just request a container and it's being created for them. I'm going to skip this. It's basically just behind the scenes that we are able to very flexibly work with Docker and create containers and spawn some or run some PowerShell in the background. Let me just show you how that looks like. And I'm going to do that here. So let me just go to the control center. And what I mean, I will start with this one. It is just an in-house tool where we assemble all results of all pipelines. It's basically just a connection with, let's say, a file system. And on this file system, we basically save all the apps that we ever have come across. It might be our own, it might be ISV apps, it might be Microsoft apps. Yeah, and just let me just try to get to the base app, our base app. Here you can see that we basically have all the version of all the apps that we ever created through our pipelines. This kind of like gives us the opportunity to approach all these apps also from, in this case, an AL. So what we did, we combined having all the apps available with being able to create Docker containers. So that's kind of like where we go into the Hadock part, where we basically created let's say a functionality to create containers, right? So we kind of like have maybe an example, this one, where we created a template for our product in a certain release. And you see we have kind of like the same templates with multiple releases. This is the latest. And you see here is basically just a definition like, okay, if I would create a Docker container for this one, I will take this image. I will take this license. So we also have a collection of licenses with custom licenses. So we would be able to set up Docker containers with a certain license. And then we have all the apps that we would like to install on the container. Again, if I would like to add some ISV apps here as well, I would be able to do that. Yeah, container info is not really that important. We are able to run some scripts. Usually we don't touch this at all. And we have some variables, and again, usually we don't touch this except for this backup file. If we would like to restore a certain backup file, maybe to have some data, then we would be able to do that as well. So what developers usually do is simply choose a template that they like, then create a new request for a new template, and then let's say demo Areopa, let's that. I can see what images it will take. That was the one that was in the template, so that's fine for now. Here are the apps that were defined in the template. I would be able to add some more apps if I would like to, or remove apps if I don't like all of them. Maybe set up some kind of backup file to point to some kind of data. And then that's it. So usually that's it. They just name it somewhere or something and then request. Now in the background, a new Docker container is being created. It will be my request. So this is the one that I just created. And these are the ones that I already created. Yeah. So maybe this one for a certain customer, but it doesn't really matter. Now, what do we get? Obviously a container where I can download also on launch.json. If I would do this, I can simply just download this to my .vs Code folder, and then I'm able to work against that container. I'm obviously also able to open the web client, which is basically just a URL. Now, the fact that this all works with my account and all that is just very user-friendly. I mean, the developers don't care at all how Docker works. They can just create a certain environment, a certain version, whatever, and in 5 minutes they have their environment and are able to work. All of this runs on quite good hardware, so I don't get why this is not logging in, but in any case, it should also be quite fast. Okay, it's now working to set this one up, so that's yeah, that's kind of like what we do with Hadock. So development environment covered. And then we have DevOps. Now, all repositories on DevOps kind of like look the same. And if I would go to DevOps, and you see here, for instance, a customer, but if I would change to our product, you will see that even the product just looking the same. It's always the same. We have the same folder structure. We have the same kind of pipelines. We have the same inner folder structure, let's say. So let's have an overview on what that means. Now, first, the settings. We always have repository level settings. I don't care about the work or the multi-root workspace settings because that's only applied when people use the multi-root. These settings are the lowest level that I can set, and these are the settings that I can basically force upon other developers. Yeah, so I can force my file name convention. I can force the code cops this way. Yeah, and I can also apply the rule set this way as well. Yeah? So we have a very simple rule set as well. Most of them are or have been bugs in the rule sets that we still have. But yeah, these are still things that we add. Now, by the way, let me just open a better app to show you. Next, what we also have, two apps, an app and a test app, and soon we will have a Business Central Performance Toolkit app as well. There's still some investigation going on what we would do with the data of the Performance Toolkit, but this is absolutely on the table as well. I would like to incorporate that into anything pipeline that we have. We also have recommended extensions, which I would recommend, by the way. These are actually the minimum amount of extensions that I want other people to work with. Now, I cannot force the installation of an extension to a local VS Code, but I can at least show the pop-ups that I would like people to use. And quite important here, obviously, is this one to have that file name convention, but also this one to make everyone use the right object numbers. And then, yeah, we have sub-modules per module. Yeah, sub-modules per app sometimes, especially in a base app that's very comparable with the system app, where you have like multiple, let's say, sub-apps. We call it modules. And what we usually do is just create a folder, and then every single object, it can be table, page, code unit, doesn't really matter. It's just in that folder. So you have a nice collection of especially this isolated functionality. And this is something that we apply to pretty much everything. Now, from the moment people are code contributing there and create a pull request, there's also going to be a code review. And this is how we keep the bar as high as we can. Now, about that bar, if you set it very low, people will just not aim high, right? And if you set it high, at least what you do is jump as high as you can, right? So in a way, this is also what we would like to achieve to have the best at all quality as at all possible. So don't underestimate the code review. This is where you can check your guidelines. This is where you can test the individual level of the knowledge of your developers, right? And this is also where the improvement starts, right? The only thing, if you see here that people need some training, then this is where you will see it. Yeah. So what we do in code review, we will check every single pull request, everything, always, everything, every customer, every pull request, every product, every pull request. Yeah, but we obviously, I mean, this is still just a code check. This is not a functional check. We will not check for bugs. This is where we will check for code and compliance and guideline compliance. So typical things where we'll look at is there a test? If there's no test, we basically don't allow the pull request. Is performance related everything being taken care of? Like, did we think about autocalc fields, set load fields, a key, and were we conscious about locking? And obviously the other guidelines that I've been talking about, was there a method code unit and so on. So I have some examples here. Obviously these are finished pull requests. So everything is already okay here, but yeah, let us see. The typical thing that we do in the pull request is we go to files, and the first thing I look at is there a test? So it's very easy to see because it's in two separate folders, and the test is exactly, there is another test. There is a new test, and there is a completely new test. And I'm already happy with that. When you really go into that, I might have had some comments here. I mean, 2 asserts, too much code. I should have called out to another code unit. And Luc is probably a little bit disappointed now, but in a way, I will not be too difficult about that. I'm already happy that I have a test, and it's a decent test, and it tests the functionality that we are implementing. And at the customer side, I do not want to hold back on being able to go live with this change request too long, right? So it's something. Sometimes we need to put some water with the wine, let's say. This is another example where you might say, like, hey, no code on tables, but this is actually a good exception where we allow validation code on tables. So this is code that's not in a method code unit. It's already an alarm, let's say. But this is something that we allow. We allow, let's say, validation code, typical on-off to validate on table level, because yeah, it's a validation of the data. This is another example where we actually had a comment. So Stefan, I'm by the way not the only code reviewer. We have 5 code reviewers in our company. And here Stefan noticed that the previous commit did not contain a set load fields. He noticed that we did some data access, and we are using only the email field apparently. So that's obviously very doable with the set load fields in this case. So yeah, again, a test, so that was okay. And maybe the last example, where we have some more code, okay. But what I immediately see is, for instance, that there is a table method that we see, but a call out to a method code unit, which is perfect. This is how we like it. And within that code unit, there is some data access, yes, but with a set load field, that's good. That's usually as far as we go. I would go a little bit further into the actual, but that all look good. Yeah. So yeah, that is a typical code review. It doesn't take too long, but when you really get trained in it, let's say you do it a lot, you really see the pinpoints where you really need to look at and where not, and who needs some extra attention and who not. And yeah, you have also a way to train people that way. And then for developers, they basically completed their pull requests, and this is basically where it ends for a developer, because this is where we would go into the CI part, the continuous integration part, right? The goals of, as I said, is one product on-prem and on SaaS, and always be able to hotfix. So what we do for the product, we implemented that release flow with the stable master branch. Now that kind of like, well, let me just show you that maybe briefly. So back to the product. All our apps have got their CI pipeline. So this is basically the pipeline, and if you go to one of the pipeline, you'll see that we actually test quite a lot. Oh, come on. So what is important here is, first of all, we do a very fast compile. So basically in 2 minutes, we already know, or in 1 minute, we already know if the compilation, which means also breaking changes, because this is an app source app, is working and all that. So after the fast compile, we will set up a Docker container because we want to run the tests. Now within this Docker container, we also deploy the previous version of the app and then the current version of the app, not to look into the breaking changes, but rather to look into the upgrade code unit. I would like to run the upgrade as well. So that's what we do here as well, and we obviously run the test as well. So in the CI flow and even in the validation of the pull request, we always run all the tests of this app. Yeah. In this case, that means about 1,200 tests. So that is the typical product CI flow. What I wanted to show you as well, is the branches that we will have, because for every single release that we will do, like the last one was a 90.3, we will always create a release branch. So if you would like to hotfix, this is going to be the branch that we will hotfix if we have a customer on this release. Now, I also said that we always upgrade all customers, so that's kind of like in the same story here. Usually, not actually always now, and I touch wood because I would like to try to keep it up. So we always upgrade all our on-prem customers to the latest release. So if we need a hotfix, it's usually also, for now, it's always on the latest. We do keep all the previous because it is nice to be able to compare between all these branches as well. So we basically just keep all the release branches always. For customers, it's another story. We try to keep it as simple as at all possible. So we do not implement Git or GitHub Flow. We actually only do feature branches. That's what we do. And a lot of people say, like, what? So you cannot basically feature picking or you cannot hotfix. No, we can't. And everybody is very aware of that. And it still works. We have now 40 customers that is live on Business Central, either on-prem or in the cloud, and we are still able to do what we do without the complexity of Git flow. We just do feature branching. Can I show that in a way? Yeah, probably. It kind of like means that, yeah, by the way, it's perfectly normal that pull requests fail. I mean, that's perfectly okay. I'm very okay with that. But what I wanted to say is, for instance, this case here. So I had a feature and another feature here. Both of them were okay and pushed to the test environment. But only here I pushed to live environment. That means if this push automatically pushed this feature and this feature as well, because we only have one stable branch, one stable master branch. From the moment I push it to the master branch, everything is included in there. If that's the only version that I will push and deploy to the customer, then I basically have a cumulative deployment. It kind of like means I'm not able to really hotfix. Like in this case, if this would have been a hotfix, let's say, and I didn't want to push this feature or this feature, well, I wouldn't be able to do so. The only way to push this hotfix, let's say, is to be able to do that cumulatively as well. So I can only do that with that and with that feature simultaneously. That's a very big disadvantage of feature branching. I don't have time to go. I mean, this is a session on its own. But yeah, I must say, it works for us. And we can keep it simple this way. And I'm very happy with that, to be honest. So this is also where the job for the developer ends, because I mean, where the CI pipeline begins is where the developer ends his job. Now, this is not where it ends. Obviously, there is still a lot of deployment that we need to do. Now, what we did extensively is implemented in every single environment, both customers and even on-prem. Customers and even for products in our own test environments, we implemented the LOps external deployer. This is a free tool. Everybody can use it. It basically enables this upload extension page for any kind of on-prem environment as well. That kind of like means that you can approach, again, the on-prem and SaaS the same way with the automation API. That obviously simplifies, again, a lot. Now, continuous deployment for a customer is, as I said, with the external deployer. On app source, obviously that doesn't work. There's no way for us yet to upload to app source, but even that is something that we try to automate as much as at all possible. Now, you have seen the spaghetti of apps. Now, this collection of apps is actually the result. I mean, this is the result of the entire collection. What we offer on app source is a subset of all of these apps. Now, as you see, we have a fin offering, we have a sales purchase offering, we have logistics offering, multi-company offering, and there are some other offerings that we will do. And I would like to test all of these collections separately. And that's actually what we are doing in this pipeline here. It's a release pipeline. All of our apps are being downloaded, and that's actually where we implement basically a set of tests. It's not hocus pocus. Let me just try to go to the actual pipeline. Is it this one? Yeah. So what we do, we download all the artifacts, obviously. But then this is the real magic here. We just do an app validation. It's not really an ALOPS app validation. ALOPS wrapped around the app validation from Microsoft. Just made it a little bit easier to start. And this is actually just, Microsoft app validation. That's the first thing that we do. Now, we want to have that successful for every single offering, because remember, we have that one big collection of apps. And I don't want to offer the logistics when this one would only succeed, but the rest is failing, because then something in the entire collection is wrong. Every single offering needs to succeed. And then I go into the next step, And this step is actually, I didn't approve it yet, but it's just going to create a zip file, or basically a folder of files that I will use to upload in Partner Center, and that's it. Yeah. So for every single offering, it will create a folder, and then we are able to upload our stuff to AppSource. I see that my time is over. I have a few details that I would like to share still about the translations. We do translations, obviously, especially in Belgium. We have three languages, actually four, but we actually do three. But in any case, we do that with AL Studio. I actually noticed that not a lot of people are using AL Studio for that. Now, it's actually a really nice tool to manage translation. I really recommend that. So this is actually just very quickly the translation manager of AL Studio. It's in VS Code, but it's not really, I mean, our consultants use this. And all they need to do is having all the XLF files. You see here, it's just XLF files. It doesn't need the code. I can simply go to my to-dos and I can translate all my languages at the same time. So French, Dutch, other Dutch, German, English, I would get that all here in one big grid. So I'm basically editing multiple files at the same time. It is able to use DeepL as well. So it works with the translation memory and with DeepL. So basically it automatically translates for you as well, if you would like to. We are very happy with this. And what we do in the process is at the end of a development cycle, it could be a sprint, it could be a release, whatever, it's predefined. We basically generate all the XLF files, and then we just do one big translation, usually just, let's say, a few hours of work, and then we just upload that in a pull request and done. Yeah, sorry about the testability. Luc, what should I do? Should I continue? Because I noticed that it's only 3 minutes left.
There are not a lot of questions on the question window. How much time would you need?
Well, let's say 5 to 10 minutes.
Let's take it. We might. Okay. What we might do is there was one question and one note. Let's pick that first, so that everybody who is to leave at the hour can make advantage of that. Rino Verrijzer was asking already at the start when you talked about the subscribers. Is there still a restriction how many code units you can create within the license of a customer? So if you would have more or less the ultimate one where every subscriber would be in one code unit, and as you showed, you have a lot of code units. How does that relate to the restrictions on customer license? I think it's still there, right?
Yeah, it's still there. So for customer license on-prem, you still buy your code units.
Yeah.
What we always do, we always sell at the minimum of 100 code units, and that is usually enough for everything, to be honest. For an average customization, an average PTE. For an average and big customers, it's usually 200 or 300 code units that we need. Yeah. And for a product, it's up to you what you request. So we requested 4,000 code units, and that's what we have. That we're doing it with.
Yeah. And note from Eric Ernst. He was hoping to see the 700 tenets in action. But of course, no, it's not there, Eric. But maybe, I don't know, consider that it might be a next webinar, Waldo.
Yeah.
About using.
I will consider it. I mean, it's not really. This is one of the customers that we have, and the customer has 700 companies, and we decided to put it in 700 tenants, and basically it's a multi-tenant environment of 700 companies. Yeah, not really the topic of today, to be honest.
Yeah. We might enthuse you for later on. So we're getting at the hour. I would say, Eric, let's finish it. So take the 5 to 10 minutes. It will be on the recording. Anybody leaving, you'll have to replay it later on. So take your time.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. No, I really wanted to touch this subject as well, as it's part of the development cycle, and it's actually a big part of our development cycle. As big as I did the story a few times already. From the moment I got the first version of your book, Luc, I read it in one day. I basically put aside all my meetings because for the first time, I felt that it was possible, let's say, to decently do testing at that point. And I'm not joking about this, by the way. So I read the book, and the next day I ordered 5 copies. You remember that, Luc?
Yeah.
And when I got them, I basically distributed them. And the week after that, we basically just started with testing and mandatory testing. Every next pull request had a mandatory test. That's how we got started with testability. And let's see where we are now at the moment. I'm not saying that we are there yet. There are still steps to be taken, I think, especially on the API testing. We're not doing anything yet, to be honest. But I just wanted to show what we are doing because it really has helped us so much in avoiding bugs, in avoiding catastrophes even, that I can only recommend that everybody's doing this. So what we did, what we do at the moment. So we do unit testing and integration testing on a certain way. And unit testing is basically, the units that we test is the methods that we have. Remember the generic method pattern, let's say 2,000-3,000 code units that we have that are purely methods. Now, a method only contains a method code unit only contains one global function. This is the one function you need to test. Just imagine you put all your business logic in the method code units, then you have a very clear overview on what you need to test. It's those methods that you need to test as a unit. Yeah. So these are units that we test, and we obviously test bugs as well. From the moment you have a bug report, the first thing that we need to do is create a test, basically reproduce the bug, and then fix it by making the test work. That is basically where we got started. This was basically that week that we got started and still do today. How we do that in the multiple app story is that we have a unique test suite per app. Yeah. So that's, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to decently show you that. So what we do specifically, so every app has a test app, yeah, and this test app always has an install code unit. And this install code unit you see has got a predefined name that consists of parts of the app name itself. So you see here the app name contains distri and ends with test. We only want whatever is between distri and test. That's kind of like it. That kind of like means that every app will have automatically a set of tests being installed from the moment we install the test app, and in its isolated test suite. Yeah. So it's very actually easy to run our tests because that is actually the test that we want to run for a certain app. So in the base app, that's going to be the test. Now, what is the suite going to be? As you see here, the app.json says is this the test base. So the test suite will be base. Yeah. So this is a generic code unit, and this code unit we basically have in all our apps. So that kind of like means when we would install all these apps, we have automatically quite a set of test suites with all the collections of code units or that we would have per test. Yeah, that is kind of like what we do in the unit testing part or the CI pipeline. Maybe I can show you that, the latest base maybe. We will run those tests, and you see here already we will run the test suite base and only base. Now base has got dependent apps as well. Base is dependent from the environment app, for instance, and from the tracking app. Now we are not going to run the tracking tests or the environment tests. We just run the base tests. That's the scope we're in. That's the unit I'm testing. Yeah. In the CI flow. That's what we try to see as unit testing. Okay. In an integration test, we would basically test the combination of all our apps. Yeah. And what we do for that is we created a new app. A new app that is going to run, and it's only going to exist merely there for integration testing. If I show that in, sorry, I still have the wrong step here open. In here, we will have our test app here. Here it is. And this is actually, yeah, it also contains, again, the same things, but you'll see that the app does not contain anything. I mean, this is not an app, this is a test app. And the test app is going to collect all the apps and run all the tests of them. You'll see here the pipeline is completely different. It's basically just going to run the test suite for all the apps that we have in our suite. Yeah, it's quite hard coded, but that's okay. I'm just going to run all the apps, all the tests, the entire test suite. Let's say. We are, by the way, working on this as we speak, so it's failing at the moment. It's failing since a certain day. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show you the result. It would be nice if we kind of failing that I was expecting. But as I said, we are working on that. Let me just, yeah, this is not the best example ever. Let me just go back. Server error, sorry about that. Let me then just show this one. So the end result is actually accumulation of all working tests. Now you might wonder, like, hey, is this normal that just everything works? No, absolutely not. I mean, just imagine the base app, which is quite low-level app, has got a posting routine and a test for a posting routine. Sales purge builds some kind of message within that posting routine. The base app does not have that message. The sales purge has got that message. If I have the base app, I do not expect the message and everything is fine, but all of a sudden the base test will fail if I have the sales purge app installed, because there's a message and I'm running a test here that doesn't expect the message. So usually when you combine multiple apps, tests are starting to fail while it's okay to fail. And this is actually something that we are solving in the functionality of that test app. So I've got an example here, by the way. Yeah, I will come back to this. So we will provide a mechanism to replace tests. Now, I have an example here. So this is actually 3 tests that we replaced by 3 other tests. Now, just in that case, what I explained, like there is some kind of user interface that was not expected in a lower level app. I still want to run that test, obviously, in the lower level app, but I basically just need to implement the handler. Yeah. So what we do, we have a mechanism to disable tests from that lower level app, and then to validate if the test was updated. So if I just disable a test, the business logic will still make sure that it fails because I need to replace it by a new version of the test. And that new version is basically usually just a copy paste of the test that already existed in the base app. We will paste that to the test app and then solve it in the test app. Yeah. So we're still running all the tests, only we improve them because there is multiple apps installed and they behave a little bit differently. And this kind of like makes that there are sometimes a lot of apps. Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Sorry about that. Oh.
Well, you don't have that much time to restart.
No. Well, let's not do that. So, also very important for the integration testing, this part here, the copy document. This is actually something that's already part of the default tests from Microsoft. And what we did, because the default test it's a drag to make them work, all of them. We just copied the copy document tests to our own tests, and you see that here, by the way. We just copied them. It's 94 combinations of copying documents from one to the other, and you cannot imagine how much can go wrong in this functionality. You creating just a new field can already break the entire functionality. I mean, just imagine that you create a field in combination with other extensions that you might have created. I mean, this can be a catastrophe. So copy document is an absolutely beautiful test to do in your integration testing, and that's also what we has prevented for us quite a lot of problems. Yeah, so that's how we do integration testing. Just a new app, making sure that we run all the test suites and fix the tests that fail. Either fix obviously the business logic, or fix the fact that it breaks just because of a handler, a missing handler. Yeah, buy, copy, paste, and just still run them this way. Yeah, and yeah, you already saw this output. That's kind of like a very nice overview that we have of all the tests run. And that's where I want to end.
Great, thank you very much.
Are there other questions?
Sorry?
Are there other questions?
No, there were no other questions on the list, unless somebody still wants to feed in one. I had one question myself. You mentioned, and I fully agree, that code review is a very essential part of the whole flow of the work. And you said you have a number of code reviewers. What is the criteria to select or to assign the role to this person or that person, or to have how many code reviewers? What kind of criteria do you use?
Well, I call them dev leads, dev leads have more responsibilities as such. I mean, every dev lead has got a fixed number of people that they need to follow up and let's say guard the, I don't know the right word in English, but let's say make sure that the quality is okay. And I'm not talking fire people when quality is not okay, absolutely not. But yeah, train them, right? So make sure that everybody is on the right level. And if not, train them to get them on the right level. That's kind of like the idea. When do people become a dev lead? Yeah, well, obviously when we need a new dev lead, first of all, and they proved that they are very familiar with guidelines that we can do. It's not a hard criteria, but yeah, people that have proven their abilities, let's say that.
Yeah, clear. One question from René Welmerink. To prevent performance issues, some use an app with all the tables and fields as a base app. We have added them to the apps, to all the apps. What is the best option for performance?
Yeah, look, that's a very big discussion, and which I would love to do at some point. But the thing is that yeah, it's performance is not my main driver to architect a certain solution. So I will never create, let's say, a table extension, an app with only table extensions. I will never do that, because it doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, then just create a monolith, because all of your apps will be dependent on that one table extension app. And I don't see the use anymore. I will not be able to only create, let's say, only take one app of yours because I automatically get all the table extensions that I don't need. So it's not isolated at all anymore. So on an architectural level, performance level, it does make sense. Absolutely. Architecturally, in my opinion, it doesn't. So we chose to put more time into the code review and set load fields and all that. And obviously only create table extension when you really have to. I must say, and I'm touching wood as we speak, from the performance issues that we had, table extensions were not one of it. Not one of them.
Yeah. So you have to do a good design, rethink sometimes, don't put them just in table extensions, but consider alternatives, but don't put them in a base app as a rule.
I would not just create a table extension app, no. Then I would rather go for a monolith at that point.
And René, be sure to be at enough tech, the BC Tech Days, and oh no, your workshops are already sold out. So if you haven't enlisted yourself, René, find another moment to join Waldo or Arjan on their performance workshop.
Look, I'm not saying that table extension is nothing to concern about, right?
No, that's clear.
We do analysis on how many table extensions that we have on one table, and the maximum that we have is 7 at the moment on the sales header. And this is something that we look at. The next table extension on sales header, we really need to consider to not doing that. Absolutely.
Clear.
Yeah, but I will not take that other route either. So, yeah.
No, I think it makes fully sense what you're saying. It's always the case if you take one rule, go left all, then you forget about the options on the right side anyway. Let's close down. We took a little bit more, and thanks for those who stayed. But of course, everybody has a reason to leave earlier. A last one from Peter Konijn, who left already. Amazing session, Waldo. Thank you. So yes, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for being here. Waldo, thank you once more, and I'll do my best to get this on YouTube this evening already. See you maybe next time when we will have Freddie Christensen on our show, who will go and talk about AL for GitHub. I thought I had this screen on my one to thank you, but apparently it's gone, so we have a black screen right now. I'll put it in on the recording. Have a good evening, everybody, or a good remaining part of the day, or even good night when it's late on your side, and let's meet next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.